Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us today. I know you're all joining us from different markets, different countries, so appreciate you all dialing in. I'm Tanya Mustafa. I'll be moderating today's International Women's Day Leadership Dialogue, and together we will investigate structural barriers to workplace equity and learn about effective leadership strategies for advancing women in the workplace. We are honored to be joined by a distinguished member of panel, leaders who truly bring diverse vantage points to this conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome Eric Barbier, founder and CEO of AAA. Eric is a serial entrepreneur who has built multiple technology driven businesses and scaled them globally. Eric serves on boards of various notable companies across Europe, Middle East, and Asia. We are also joined by Holly Fang, Chief Business Officer at Finmo. Holly is an influential leader and operator who has led high growth teams and currently also serves as a board president of Singapore FinTech Association. Next, we have Monica Agarwal, head of HR and talent at Money Hero Group, which is a publicly traded company. Monica is also an author, Harvard Council member, and a trusted advisor to C-suite and boards on culture and people transformation. And finally, Nilay Khandelwal, Senior Managing Director at Page Group, a globally leading recruitment firm where he has built and scaled high-performing businesses across geographies and partnered closely with organizations hiring across APAC, giving him deep insight into evolving talent landscape. Their collective perspective will give us a 360-degree view of challenges and opportunities ahead. I'm excited to begin this conversation. Let's start by inviting our panel members um, and request them to share with us what equity means to them in their role today. Holly, let's start with you.
Thank you, Tanya, and very nice to meet everyone. So I think for me, equity is the fact that we recognize that we're not the same, that people are different, and we start from different places. And I always think back to one instance that's always stayed with me, which was at our middle school prom. So I went to a secondary school, which is a girls' school. And then after the farewell address, a bunch of us went up to our principal and we said, "Do you have any advice for us going to a co-ed junior college, high school, where we'll be exposed to boys, you know?" And what she said was, "Don't try to be like boys. You're not the same. You can be better." And I think that really stood with me all these years, that people start from different places, but through support and recognizing of their potential, everybody can excel in their own ways.
Thank you for sharing that, Holly. Yes, we can. I think the first step is really to know who you are, and then face the world. Great to hear that from you. Should we move on to Nilay next?
Hi, everyone, and good to join all of you. Uh, when Holly, your statement just brought me back to a session I attended for my daughter at RGPS not so long ago, where the principal was talking about probably the similar stuff. You pass your PSLE, but think beyond the obvious. So, yeah, very resonatable aspect. For me, honestly, I think equity is a choice that as leaders we make every day. I think in our current environment, which is quite diverse, especially in Singapore, and multi-generational workforce, our decisions and leaders must open doors and, in my honest opinion, create real opportunity for people. I think it's very easy to figure out whether equity or the work around equity is a target, is a ratio, or is it a authentic behavior that you have ingrained in your day to day. And I think leading with authenticity when you're driving equitable workforce agenda, I think remains the core of it, to be really appreciated and to be really executed. Because sometimes this remains a number, but not really something that is driven through the organization. So for me, that's what equity means at workplace.
Thank you, Nilay. Monica.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. And much like Holly, I think my view of equity is same, that we all come from different backgrounds in our lives, And it's, most of the times people say, hey, I have full intention of being equitable to all my colleagues, employees, speaking from a workplace perspective. But for me, it is intentionally designing systems which bring fairness to everyone. It's easier said than done. But if you are just intentional, but are not designing your workplace in terms of policies and flexibilities and processes, that gives everybody a fair chance to come across with, after overcoming all the challenges that they might have from their legacy, then you're not creating an equitable work environment for everybody. So it's more about moving away from equal access to actually providing fairness and being very deliberate about it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that brings both, Holly's and Nilay's perspectives together of recognizing your differences and then, embedding structural procedures to make it equitable. Eric, would love for you to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I fully agree with everything which has been said so far. From my angle as a CEO of a startup, where small company where people really matter a lot, it is a best business practice for me to make sure that every voice is being heard, and that people can grow, even if they may not have all the same chances at the beginning. So as a leader, that's something which makes total business sense, is to make sure that everybody is being heard at the right level.
Thank you for sharing that, Eric. I think that just opens the conversation naturally, that yes, we are different, things are not equal, like Holly said, we can be better, so why aim to be the same, but at the same time we have to recognize the challenges and the realities of life. And the reality is, for example, according to a recent report by United Nations, across the world, women perform 76% of unpaid care work. um, and this is anywhere from childcare, elder care, emotional support, coordination, culture championship, being the glue to keep the teams together, keeping the families together, and much of it is invisible. But this directly suppresses women's economic participation, their performance visibility, and their promotion readiness. So, because they are shouldering, a disproportionate amount of care burden. So, Eric, what are the most urgent policy and organizational interventions that would materially shift women's ability to participate in workforce fully?
So obviously, I think you've stated something we're all very aware of. Obviously, there is things which are more like government related, which having a better care infrastructure, whether it's childcare or elderly care. But that's obviously a bigger policy. What we should be doing, and that's what we're trying to do in our organization, is to have the flexibility for women, and not only women, but for all the players in the value chain, whether it's we're providing hybrid organization of work. We have people who prefer to come early so that they can leave early and sometimes recheck a bit on work once the kids are sleeping. So that's something we're extremely aware of, and that's what many organizations can do. And you just need to change the usual process, but it's not that difficult.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, because I think there is this conversation happening around hybrid work, as we go, that should we come back to that 9 to 5, 5 days a week in the office, and what will be the implications of it. So I'm happy that you mentioned that it's very much possible to create a hybrid work environment in a high performing startup that is also accelerating and scaling. Holly, in your organization, what practical steps have you seen that lighten the burden for employees, especially caregivers, without penalizing their careers?
Yeah, I resonate with what Eric shared. I think we come from similar backgrounds of small companies that's fast moving, where things are constantly in motion. But at the same time, we also practice flexibility and hybrid working style. And I think when we normalize flexibility across genders, across levels within the company, it's something that people are comfortable to openly talk about. So we have male employees who will say, okay, every day I'm going to leave work at 4 because I'm going to pick up my kids, and it's my duty, my job to pick up because my wife doesn't have that flexibility. Or they will say that, okay, I'm going to block out this time in the evening from 5 to 7 when I'm not replying to anything. I'll come back online after I put my kids to bed. We talk about it, we encourage it because it means that there's a mom at home whose burden is being shared, and that's a great thing. And when we have leaders, male colleagues who talk about these things, are proud of the parental duties that they take on. You have your junior staff, right, whether they're male, female, looking up to it and knowing that it's normal. I think that's setting good examples. The other is being very deliberate actually about the kind of performance culture we set in the company. So at Finmo, we don't really care about being visible or being present or being, around your stakeholders or your bosses. It's not about being seen, it's about what you deliver. So we ensure that we have that at the onset, which is in terms of goal setting. So at the start of the year, we sit down together from the CEO on, we cascade down our goals. And these goals are visible to everyone in the company. So anybody can look up someone else's goals. And we encourage goal setting to be quantifiable, trackable, to be objective. So then everybody knows what each team, each individual is being assessed on. And what that leads to is a performance-based culture that's objective. And that's not based on perceived availability of, being able to join meetings or being able to turn on your video, all the time, because sometimes you may be on the move, you're picking up your kids. So that I think makes it easier for caregivers, whether they're male or female, to do their job at a flexible time, but still be able to deliver on their work. And the last thing is being very deliberate and having platforms that encourage such conversations. So, for example, internal, say, women groups that may not be just for women, you have allies that are free to join as well. And people can openly talk about things like anxiety for returning parents. What are the re-entry path? What are some of the work that maybe has been divided, and how do you help them to take back some of the scope? For example, flexibility for moms, breastfeeding moms, especially when they come back. In some of the smaller companies, they didn't really start out with having, say, maternity rooms, because generally our staff are a bit younger. But as we, age together, we enter that phase. We need to also have some of these facilities ready for our returning moms. So all of these conversations, if you encourage that, your platforms for these employee needs to be raised, then you ensure that your leadership and HR policies are designed with the people in mind and not done in a vacuum. And that we stop thinking about, oh, we have to make changes for certain individuals, but rather that we are evolving and redesigning our workplace together with our workforce. So I think these are the things that are very tangible actions that we've taken.
That's really great to hear. And these are, they sound like, small things, but they can create a huge impact on the mindset and eventually culture. And hopefully that translates into productivity and retention, as we go along. But Holly, you said, creating communities that, you can come and talk about, the challenges, let's say if you're, raising young kids or teenagers or returning, after a break or a sabbatical after. And I know that Monica, you are huge on community building and creating that culture as well. And and Nile as well. I think, creating that safe space, for returning moms and not just, for one individual, but building that into the infrastructure of the company. Do you have, some things to add, Monica, here, Nile? Please feel free.
I think like it or not, but we all have all grown up, at least in our part of the world, in a very patriarchal society. So when it comes to caregiving, it is by default assumed that, the women folk will either step back from their careers or just, manage somehow work as well as house. And that is what I've been trying to challenge over a period of time in my previous organizations as well as the current organizations, where we extend external childcare support, where people are able to challenge the dads if they are not utilizing that. And we ask them that, hey, how come you have this leave balance which is still available, and we are almost at Q3 or a Q4, and then we know you have young kids at home. And it took a lot of deliberate effort to bring that group of dads together, where they're not discussing sports and beer, but actually talking about how do you support your wife at home, and how do you, bond more with the kids. And I figured that generally in the current generation, dads generally want to bond with their kids and step up and, be equal caregiver to their kids. However, our society is also quite funny that way, that they will call them out. That why do you have to take a day off to bring your kid for vaccination? Is your wife not around? So that are some of the challenges that even dads face, and it's equally important for us to understand their side of the story, and how do we support dads from not getting shamed if they are stepping in to support their household, take care of their kids. And that is something that we have been doing very intentionally at Money Hero, and we have a thriving community of dads. And sometimes some of the moms go to the dads, my husband is, not stepping up enough. Do you have any advice for me of how I can nudge him? So I think that that's been a good win for us.
Yeah, I can totally resonate that, Monica. I think whenever we manage to get a boys trip out, you end up talking about family more than what used to be the boys trip back in the day. So absolutely resonate with that idea. I think, look, I joined Page Group in 2008, and if I was to look at that period of a British recruitment firm to where it is today, I think we have grown and gone in the more positive direction in terms of how things have been managed, and how we have created an environment which is for all to thrive and succeed. And a couple of points taking from what all of you have said. I mean, we used to have, I think 2015, if I remember correctly, 1 out of 4 women who will come back. And it's a commercial role. So, numbers have to be delivered in some capacity. 1 out of 4 women will come back from maternity and would stay in the organization for a duration of 12 months or more. At this current present time in 2025, we have 3.5 of them who will come back from maternity and will stay in the organization for 12 months and more. And 33% of them will have a promotion in that 12 months as well. In fact, uh, in the recent couple of years, we have even promoted people while they have been on maternity leaves, which was very unprecedented in our old school culture. So that's one part of it, and I think providing facility. I think Holly, you talked about the facilities that you have within the ecosystem, and there's always a question: why do we need that extra space? Especially places like Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, very expensive office places. Why do we need to carve out a special place for individuals? It's just the equitable. Again, go back to equity. It is an equitable nature of the role. It's not granting something special. It is what a work environment should look like. The second one on flexibility, and I think this has gone leaps and bounds since the post-COVID era, where there are many organizations who claim that you can work from anywhere to come back to office 5 days a week. And generally speaking, in my belief system, flexibility is here to stay. It encompasses that whole idea around you want to take someone out for vaccination, you don't have to take a whole day off. You can just go in, go out, plug in. Ultimately, you should be accountable for what you are set out to deliver. As long as you're doing that, the means of doing it doesn't have to confine to a 9 to 5. A lot of the work that we do in today's world, they have stakeholders in different parts of the world. It's not just confined to one. So even if I'm working Asian hours, I'm expected to respond to a European customer at 10 because they need something to be done for tomorrow. So if that's the case, why does the work need to be confined to a certain timelines? So I think sometimes organization, and when we deal with clients, we get a variety of views around flexibility. And I had a funny incident in Indonesia where I was having one of these sessions where we had the local conglomerates over there who said, what is flexibility? Why do we need flexibility? We need to deliver the numbers. And you need to come 6 days a work week rather than 5 day work week. And then you had the multinationals who had a different narrative of what flexibility looked like. And you can get caught in the battle of what is right, what is wrong. I think sometimes when we are focused on 10-20% of the organization where this might be misused and it has tendency, but focusing on that set of audience versus focusing on 80% of the audience who's actually making the right impact to the business and to the customers and to the organization, I think it would be a big miss if we focus on 10 to 20%, which doesn't work out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think, just connecting these conversations usually to making a commercially viable business case is hard. And you put it really well that yes, sometimes it may get misused, but that's the population that you probably shouldn't be catering to. You're catering to the ones that you really that really need it and are performing for the business. With remote and hybrid conversation, I think 4 years ago, 5 years ago, this hybrid work has actually became a norm rather than an exception, with the pandemic and everything. And it had a huge impact on creating an environment for women where they felt that they didn't need to kind of um, take a break from work if they needed to stay back home with the kids, they were sick or something. And that actually did help a lot of women, for in their work. And now we are, on this brink of an AI revolution, which, I believe is going to certainly change the way we live and the way we work. I'm curious what kind of an impact will it actually have on creating an equitable workplace? Is it going to um, enable or hinder the distribution of care responsibilities? And I'm curious to hear about these emerging trends and their impacts, and anything that we need to be mindful about with AI coming into our lives and workplace. Monica, if you could throw some light on this topic for us.
I think AI, like you mentioned, has the potential of taking away a lot of cognitive workload from all of us. And especially for women who have been doing, as you had earlier mentioned, a lot of unpaid labor. And we have had some stereotypical stuff that has generally been pushed onto women. Can you please take care of organizing something, taking the minutes and whatnot? Have you So it's important that we leverage AI, but at the same time, AI biasness is equally real in our lives. So if when we are making the work systems, when you're designing the people systems, we do not carefully look at the kind of biases we may end up putting in our AI ecosystems, that bias can carry forward to in AI as well. So the decisions when they are being made around AI, how do you utilize it? What kind of system you're going to put in place? What are the processes and policies? It's important that we have a diverse group that works on this rather than just one particular segment of population, because then they will only train AI the way they have been operating thus far. Another important aspect to remember is we should not be putting AI on top of whatever systems already exist. Then you're just automating your already existing processes, which may not be perfect or in line with how the future of work looks like. So it's important for companies to not look at it as an IT project, but more like a workforce transformation project where you sit and re-look at your systems, how they have been designed, what is the outcome it has been driving for you, what changes would you like to bring, and then see how AI can step in and help in creating the efficiency and productivity around those systems.
Thank you for sharing that. So it's basically about redesigning the whole workflow rather than just augmenting, some of the things with AI. Um, it's I can't fully imagine what the world is going to look like, 3 years from now in terms of, how we approach work, how we work. A lot of conversations that I sometimes, end up having with organizations is that, yes, we are piloting new projects, we are, learning new ways of doing work, but sometimes when you have to upskill, it's almost like, it's up to an individual that they sometimes have to give out that time outside of your work to invest in upskilling. And sometimes, women may not have, that time outside of their day job to invest in reskilling and getting AI trained, for example, or learning this new way of work. So are they going to, is that a challenge we need to kind of, be aware of? Anyone from the panel, happy to hear from Holly, on do you see, is this, something, to be worried about, and how can we possibly mitigate it if um, upskilling opportunities demand more time outside of your working hours?
Well, I mean, the way that we look at it is there's two types of upskilling. One is what is needed for your job. The other is out of personal interest, right? And generally, where it's out of personal interest, maybe you're looking for a career switch, you're looking to change industries or change roles, then people tend to want to invest in that upskilling in their own time and will. The other is where it's related directly to your role, to your scope. It helps you to be better, more efficient. And then these are generally we have training budgets that support such upskilling. And then we let our employees do it during office hours because it is relevant and there is tangible benefits that leads to more effective, efficient output and employee. Or they can do it at their own free time. It's flexible for them. I think the what is important for us as leaders and as an organization is to ensure that there is no that we help to release or relieve any fear in our employees of being replaced. And what we can do is one, of course, that we are upskilling together as an organization, but the other is that we're invested in you. First and foremost, we don't see AI replacing you, but really we want AI to be helping you. And how do we get there? I think that's really trying to address again things at the root, which is what is causing that concern. Is there fear? Maybe that's what we should be addressing first.
Thank you for sharing that. And you're right, not for the fear of being left behind, but that we'll take you along, with this change and enable you with what we can. I want to move this, conversation towards, another, major thing that has actually, caught everyone's eye on social media as well. LinkedIn actually revealed that while women represent nearly half of the workforce at the entry level, so equal number of, men and women may enter the workforce, but women encounter a sharp drop to top gap, leaving senior roles before reaching the C-suite. So at the senior levels, and this is like C-1 levels, there are only 32% women, that hold those jobs, and at C levels, it's even less. And Holly, I think you're one of those, unicorn women, women leaders in that case. And another thing, that I want to compare this with is mentorship and sponsorship, because mentorship actually meant sponsor backed employees are promoted twice as fast in organizations, and this is a McKinsey report. So it does open doors, it can kind of, if used correctly, can actually help you, go through those that hierarchy or C-level roles that women don't often get. And yet, women consistently receive low sponsorships. For example, 45% men say that they actually have a sponsor, and only 30% of women, on contrast, say that they have one. So, Eric, why does this gap persist, and what needs to shift structurally to fix it?
I think there's a lot of things which are coming from also education as well. Probably one of my disappointment in my life as a dad is I didn't manage to convince my daughter to be an engineer like me, and yeah, and that frustrated me because since really she was a young age, I was really pushing her to be in that, and obviously in startup and so on in technology. being good in tech and being an engineer is key and will definitely help in growing faster. So that's some of the macro things we need to improve all, because I think it's not only the parents, it's also the society and so on, who are not promoting more technical work in an equal way. Obviously, inside our organization, what I'm trying to do is to be as much as possible to be the sponsor of all the women in. So even if I notice that a manager is not paying attention to the woman in his team, I would pay attention for him.
That's great, because I think having a leader who believes in it and is makes it so much more easier. So you're right, educating everyone about it, and educating the leader to create less fear, I feel, in women to go into those technical fields, which probably they feel, or they believe, or they've been told that they're not good at. Nile, what practices do you see that generally accelerate women's progression through sponsorship and mentorship?
Yeah, I think there's always a problem statement, and then how do we go about addressing them? If I look at our customers, and it started with financial institutions back in 2010, 11, and I remember many organizations will come to us and say that we really want women leaders to be hired in specific roles, and we'll give you extra 5% for hiring them, because we need to fill this quota or a percentage that a CEO has as a target. And I think the first couple of years we just went ahead because it was extra commercials and it meant business for the company. But over the period of time, while speaking to a lot of the candidates who were female leaders, we realized that the gap really comes in when at the mid-career level, they drop off. And then there is a period of time where they are not working or working in a contractual role, which at that point of time was not looked upon as a favorable form of employment. And there used to be a lot of questions around it. Why did you take a career break? And again, goes back to the equitable platform for both genders. And I think this is where the sponsorship element comes in quite handy, and it has to be delivered not just at the top because it's a target to achieve, but in order to have a sustainable pipeline of women leaders at a management level, you got to fix the mid management. And now that's the question to the clients. Most of the time, when they ask the question on, we want women leaders, what are you doing systematically? Because you're fixing a problem. I get it. But this is not sustainable as you move forward. So I think within the page ecosystem, we coined a group globally, which is called Women at Page in 2012. And a recent 2022 goal by our CEO is to have at leadership level, there's supposed to be a 50-50 gender ratio by 2030. And as of Jan 2025, we have progressed in the direction that is right, and we are at 54% women in leadership roles compared to 46%. Are we perfect? No, not by all means. But I think we are progressing in a direction where it's not a push for leaders to make this happen. It is their way of operating that makes others who are coming up the curve also to think along those lines, to embed that as an authentic behavior of how you manage a day to day. Like what Eric said, if a manager doesn't pull up their socks, whether it's a male or female, he will step in. And I think these are the things that you need as intervention. But ultimately, the manager has to step up. And I think there should be a roadblock for some of these people growing up the value chain if they just can't step up. Because then you are representative of a polarized organization rather than a total organization.
Thank you for sharing that. And like Holly also said, and this brings me back to sponsorship, that sometimes, in an organization, yes, you deliver, you perform, but sometimes you also need to, be visible and be seen, in places for that senior stakeholder who comes to sit down, maybe once or twice, in a quarter, to kind of, really notice you, and then, kind of, put your name forward for that, new big project or the next promotion. And I mean, because, we agree that, we want to create a strong pipeline for leaders, for women. We need to strengthen them at the mid-management level. Are there any practical examples or the things that you, Monica, Holly, Eric, Nere, have implemented in your teams or seen implemented that have actually worked?
So I can share some examples. I think and this goes back to sponsorship, to allyship. It's first and foremost recognizing that people are different, and different in many ways, right? For example, in terms of maybe how they convey the confidence to speak, how that message is being delivered and how that's being received. I'm currently hiring for a couple of roles, and I've definitely seen the confidence coming through from maybe one gender versus the other, where they always feel like they have to tick all the boxes before they will apply. Whereas for men, I feel there's a little bit more of like a confidence that, yes, I can do the job. I'm a fast learner. So there are definitely a bit of that difference. So I think people in positions where they are able to help create space and opportunities. I think they are really playing a very instrumental role here in helping to bridge that gap. It could be something as simple as, for example, next week, FIMO, we're organizing a payments roundtable. We've invited a couple of industry leaders to speak on this roundtable, and somebody actually pointed out, hey, we have very few women on this roundtable. Does anybody around the room have any female leaders that they would like to recommend? And actually, when someone said that, actually everybody was like, "Oh, I know somebody. I know I can refer this person, that person." But if that question hadn't been asked, we would have gone ahead with that list, and it would have been, a pretty skewed representation of gender. So it's just having somebody who think about it and who is willing to, speak about it and be confident that, this is something that should be looked at very normally. And the other is having intentional platforms. So I truly believe that's important, and I've seen it also with my SFA hat. So the Singapore FinTech Association is the National FinTech Association for Singapore. We represent the entire FinTech ecosystem across all the different verticals. There's payments, Web3, RegTech, InsurTech, capital markets. And whenever we call for subcom nominations, because these needs to be your leaders, your founders like Eric, or your senior executives. What we've noticed is that a lot of times they're very quickly filled up by men, because also our space generally there's a lot more male. So in order to also help women, maybe at the mid-level, right? They could be in different verticals, but they are also fantastic leaders in their own ways. To give them a platform, we created the Women in FinTech subcommittee. And this subcommittee, you can, as long as you're female, it doesn't matter which FinTech background you come from. You can put your hand up to be on that subcommittee. And I must say that's one of our most active and impactful subcommittees to date. So they've produced so much amazing content, events, free trainings, webinars, AI workshops. It's just amazing. And last year that was the 10th year of the Singapore FinTech Festival. And the Women in FinTech subcommittee put together an initiative to celebrate 10 women that has made a difference in Singapore's FinTech landscape. So it's women recognizing women. And I felt that was really a very special initiative, and it was so well received. So these are, very tangible and actionable things. I feel that allies, they can be male, they can be female, across different positions, as long as you are able to help someone out and you bear that thought in mind. I think that can really create a lot of, ripple butterfly effect down the line.
Yes, thank you. That's really beautiful, right? Like you recognized, these 10 people and you brought them together, and they exceeded your expectations, but then they pass the bait into someone else, right? They create it for, I think it's a pay it forward or create a community, and it's beautiful, and it can be done so easily as well. But you also brought in another aspect, from sponsorship to allyship. That if you're not influential person that can actually open doors for someone, who needs it, you can still be an ally, and you can be any gender. So, but sometimes, I think every global study shows that if you don't have male allies supporting you, then your gender initiatives, diversity initiatives usually fall flat. Um, so it's very important that we take, the men along, or men, we all go along in this journey. I want to hear from Eric, who's a big ally, sponsor, mentor, for creating equity, and which is why, we have him in our panel today. Eric, what does effective male allyship look like in practice? Beyond the statements, beyond, the grand gestures, beyond the flowers and cupcakes, what does it look like?
I'm very pragmatic. No, for me, it's a lot of small signs and so on. I pay very much attention who gets interrupted in meetings. Very often it's women. So, or women sometimes don't even dare to speak. So at the end of the meeting, making sure that everybody has voiced their opinion. And we also need to integrate that because being in Singapore in a multicultural society, we all know that all the different cultures behave differently, and so some people are more outspoken, less, and so on. So me as a manager, that's really something I need to pay attention to. And it's funny because for some culture, they would see a woman would be labeled as aggressive, while the same behavior for a man would be like decisive. And some male are feels like the woman is aggressive because maybe at home his wife is not behaving like her his colleague. So that's the kind of thing I'm paying extreme attention to on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much for sharing, Eric. Who gets interrupted in the meeting? Oh, most likely is going to be the woman. I mean, it's a sad truth, right? But it's a reality, that and what you said is that, I am policing it. I am aware of it, and I hear it, and I see it, and I try to change it. I think that's, if imagine if we could incorporate that, in across all levels within the organization, that if you don't see a lot of women leaders around you, try to question why, and try to observe, what leads to that, and that's, the biggest barrier. So if you're an ally who is a little resistant to DNI initiatives, if you open your eyes and start questioning things around you, maybe you will become more supportive. But Nile, I think, because we talk about it sometimes, maternity leaves and this and that, there's also a lot of diversity fatigue, among men. So it's harder to engage them. How do we address this, with our male counterparts, and how do we engage them in a way that's more authentic and less performative?
Yeah, look, I think first of all, I think we need to stop pretending fatigue doesn't exist. We need to understand what's driving the fatigue as well. And what I've seen across our markets, that because it's a commercial organization, the men engage more authentically when we shift the conversations from "this is your obligation, this is your duty" to "this is what is fair." And I think when we frame allyship as a leadership responsibility rather than someone's personal flaw, the defensiveness that an individual has drops, and their curiosity generally rises. How do we go about getting it right? So I think as I said earlier, at an MD level globally, we have a target of 50-50 gender equality at leadership level by 2030. And this matrix, while is embedded into annual targets for all MDs, irrespective of gender, but what it has helped us since the time it has been incepted is, because it's our collective responsibility, we have seen year on year progress in this area, not only for improved women representation at the leadership level, but we've also started seeing local leaders being created in all the Asian markets in our region. And that's a big tick for us because of the continuity of leadership, which represents the customer base and the markets that we are a part of. And it's our responsibility to grow local leaders in each of the markets that we operate in. So I think this has also helped us in that other direction as well. So that for me is one of the important piece. The second one is reducing, uh, you know, a label which can sometimes come up as extra work and not embedded into the day to day. And the moment it becomes an extra work, it fizzles out over the period of time. It gets activated towards the closing time of your annual cycle, and it gets reactivated again only at that point of time in 10 months time frame. So I think it has to be a part of how we define leadership. When allyship is embedded into our culture, the feedback that we get through a 360 or have you say surveys, and what our team expects from us, I think men then feel like partners in progress, not targets of it. So I think if we address those kind of elements, we progress as a group rather than as a male or a female. And Holly, you talked about this SFA stuff on the 10 women identified and the 10 women found, passing the baton. I mean, in my experience, when I dealt with the women leadership hires and we got women leadership on board, then I found their management team to be all male largely. And that was a dichotomy for me because they had grown from the ecosystem where we needed more representation. And it went back to that, I think, we were talking about the CV selection process that Holly mentioned earlier. It just goes back into one direction, which is a safer ground rather than an equitable ground. And these are some of the things that with these 2 points, I think we have created a better working environment. Again, by no means we say that we have nailed it, but I think it's progressing in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And one thing that also, I think all of you at some point talked about, which said that you observed that women get more interrupted in discussions. Women seem less confident in interviews. They don't, put their hands up because probably they're afraid they're going to get interrupted, or they don't even apply for the jobs or the positions until they have ticked all the boxes. So it's a confidence, issue. And that also then, I'm relating this back to pay inequity. We are about, although, we are making progress in pay parity, but we are still years and years, further, from creating that true equity. Now, Monica, I know you are, passionate about, women's financial literacy. So, what role can companies play in strengthening women's financial confidence? Whether that's investment literacy or negotiation skills, and how do you actually make those programs stick and not fall through? For example, like Nile said, going back into the safe haven rather than equitable place.
Yeah, I'm very proud to say that Money Hero is a women-led workforce organization. So we are extremely proud and very intentional about it. And similarly, when we have our promotions, our internal colleagues get to call first tips on those open positions rather than going and hiring externally. Only when we absolutely cannot find somebody internally who can say be groomed over a period of 6 months or so to fill a particular leadership position is when we go and look out for an external candidate. So I think we are very intentional in terms of how we are giving opportunities to our female colleagues. And our CEO always loves to say that he's surrounded by some very strong powerhouse of women. So he just takes a lot of pride in his leadership team. In terms of pay parity, what we have done very small little efforts, but very consistent is, when you apply for a job, the first question a recruiter while screening will ask you is how much do you earn? What is your current pay? What are your expectations? So we flipped the narrative by saying this is our budget for this role. Does it work for you? You could, because like I said, right, at the start of our conversation, not everybody comes from the same place. Some person could have been, low ballparked in their previous role. And now if you apply the formula of I will give you a 10% increase or a 15% increase, that pay parity will never be taken care of that you would want to bring in. So we are very intentional about never asking people how much are you making right now. You could be making more than what we are allowing or we may be able to offer. But we say, hey, this is our budget. Are you comfortable with this? Does this work for you? And when it is your budget, it doesn't matter whether the applicant is a male or a female. It is the budget for the role that you're filling. That's it. Right. And still, like talking about women and pay literacy and pay parity, we are a personal finance aggregator platform. So, not talking about personal finance with our own colleagues would kind of not make sense. So, we also run this annual biggest fintech festival called Personal Fintech Festival in Singapore. And that is where we talk about how personal finance actually plays role in everybody's lives and what they can do. There are a lot of insightful sessions that we organize, which is free for everybody in Singapore and at a nominal fee of $1 or $2 to come and join. Internally, what we have done is we believe that as part of employee well-being, where mostly people are talking about meditation and yoga and Zumba classes, we bring in financial well-being as one of the key pillars of our employee well-being program. So we are having that open conversations about how do you do a pay negotiation, not just at the time of switching jobs, but also when getting promoted from one role to another, or even if you're making a horizontal move within the organization. Sometimes we kind of create trouble for our own selves by teaching them too many tricks, but I think it's important for everybody to know. And like you said, women are very hesitant. When I have been in this profession for 20 years now, I have not seen many women candidates coming and fighting and negotiating for money. If you tell them this is what we can give you, and they'll be like, fine, all I care about is give me the job. Where versus in my experience, the male counterparts have been like, do you have this allowance? Can I get free Wi-Fi for my house? Will you give me tech setup money and whatnot? And then you're like, the difference is pretty visible. So again, goes back to our roots, our society, how we have been brought up, but normalizing having this conversation, because that also gives you a lot of confidence as a woman to talk about money, and it no longer remains a taboo topic or people don't feel hesitant speaking up about it. So that's important. And at the same time, whatever, see, every organization is at different level of maturity, so it goes back to how mature your employees and frameworks are. But if you can create pay transparency in your organization to whatever capacity, that also helps to eliminate that just because somebody is a particular gender, they will end up earning more than others. And I think we need to start questioning our own biases. More often than not, I have seen when a woman walks up to the manager and says, hey, I'm pregnant and I'll be going away. The first thing manager thinks is, oh, this person may not come back. There is no point of promoting this person. There's no point of giving them an increase because this person is going to be away for 6 months and whatnot. Versus a male colleague walks up to the manager and says, hey, we are expecting and my wife is going to have a baby. Instantly, the thought process is, oh, we should promote him. We should give him more money because now his family responsibilities are getting increased. So how, when you're sitting in these conversations, I think as leaders, it's also a responsibility to start calling out these behaviors and biases. And I don't think anybody does it intentionally. These are very unconscious biases that we carry, and these needs to be called out.
Thank you so much, Monica. I think that was, eye-opening and so powerful. Like you said, I flipped the conversation, to instead of what is your salary to what is my budget. And yeah, I think that's a huge shift there. And so many wonderful things. I want to come for this fest, that literacy thing that you said. There's a thing or two that I can learn about negotiation in that session. Uh, and also what you said was, how people perceive it differently, where, women are going for maternity, so don't give a pay increase, there's no point. And a man, is increasing their family, and then suddenly you're like, oh, maybe they need a pay. My God, that's incredible. But I think what today's session really did, I think Nile said that, he promoted someone while they were on maternity. Like we have challengers, here, and I'm very, very proud to see that. Yes, we have a long, difficult track. You have to keep nagging and keep bringing people with us and creating a community, whatnot. But I think that we are, we are going in the right direction, especially with the room that I have today around me. I think, Holly, you are a role model, and we need so many more of you. But you're doing more than one person can, by creating, spreading yourself in so many directions, and being with us here today to spread that awareness to us as well, our audiences. Nile, you're running a commercial organization, with some very traditional legacy, ways of work, and you've created 50-50, gender in your leadership team. I don't think I hear that very often. So I think that's incredible, the way you are leading your organization. And Eric, I think, for you being a father as well, you can kind of, see the things, from where they start and what needs to be done. And you continue to be that advocate, that strong advocate, for women, especially in cutting edge fields, in tech fields where they can actually make a real impact. And you're their spokesperson here. And Monica, you're embedding all this in organizations and cultures, like you said, easier said than done, which is a humongous task as well. So thank you so much, for sharing all this, and being present here with us. I will let the session close now with one last sentence from you, just one sentence. What is one bold action that your organization will take this year to advance women's equity?
I'll go first. I'm very inspired actually by what Monica said. I mean, we are committed this year to be even more deliberate in terms of how we hire, how we pay, how we promote. But I guess one takeaway for me is maybe we can teach them even how to negotiate their pay. So that's something that maybe we can test out as well to equip them with the tools.
Wonderful.
For us, we will continue to build flexibility into our systems rather than giving it as an option. I think flexibility is something that everybody needs, and more women, so that they don't start dropping off in the mid management area. That is where I think, we have job sharing, part-time jobs, so that when they want to take a career break or sometimes just want to kind of slow down in their aspirations, they have option of continuing employment and continuing to gain that experience. And whenever they are ready to come back full force, converting them back to a full-time role. So we'll continue to be more intentional in how we are designing our systems.
Thank you, Monica.
Maybe to join the previous conversation, we'll make sure that women are more and more using AI. So even though they are not engineers, they will be able to build stuff without the developers. So
can I join as an intern?
Sure.
I mean, for me, looking at the Nordic countries or New Zealand, very closer to home, the advancement in women empowerment is quite high. I don't think we're going to get there tomorrow, but Asia has moved in the right direction. I think with whatever all of you have said, it's making sure that we not just practice some of the things that we have been doing internally, but also educating our customers, because we do have that angle with us to ensure that it's an ecosystem that is moving in the right direction. And especially in a market condition like this, sometimes diversity, equity, inclusion, some of these topics take a backseat, and performance take the front seat. So one of the things I would personally focus on is making sure that it doesn't drop off the calendar of events that we end up doing. But thank you so much to all of you for the inputs you have shared. Back to you, Tanya.
Yes. This is not a one-day conversation, like you say, Nele. Let's continue the conversation and let's keep the momentum going. Thank you to our panel for the candor, for clarity, and I wish everyone a very good afternoon ahead. Thank you for joining us today.